Wow, wow, wow. I just got done talking to Amilcar Valencia from El Refugio, and it was probably one of my favorite conversations that I've had so far in these video interviews. It's so full of information, and we dug into the idea of immigration and some of the conditions that people in detention endure, but even how that's amplified now and what's going on because of this COVID-19 pandemic. And I feel like it's the type of conversation and a topic that's kind of kept under the radar. It's something that really blew my mind and opened my eyes significantly when I first learned about it. And because of that, like in the depth that we go into in this conversation, I'm like so excited to share it. And I think it's just gonna touch your heart. I think this is just an issue that's really convicting to learn about, but also there's a lot of good and uplifting that's being done through El Refugio. So anyway, I don't want to go into any more depth there. I'll just let you take a look and let's jump right in. Well, Amilcar, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today about El Refugio and the work that you're doing with immigrants, and particularly in our area here in South Georgia. I got involved with your organization. Actually, I heard about you over a year ago, but it was about a year ago that I actually got to go down and visit your hospitality house, and we went and visited the detention center down there, and actually got to stay in touch with the person that I visited. So that was just an incredible experience, and I've told actually a lot of people about it, and I know it touches a lot of people's hearts. And so that's why I wanted to have this chat with you today, because I think what you're doing is incredible, and I think it's a topic that people are really interested in. So thank you so much for meeting this morning.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Happy to share with you a little bit about our work. And yeah, I'm here for your questions, and hopefully people can learn more about our mission and what's happening here for immigrants in the state of Georgia.
Great. Well, why don't we start off? Can you just share a little bit about yourself and how you came to El Refugio, and then get into some of the mission around behind what you do?
Yeah. Thank you. So El Refugio started back in 2010. That's when the hospitality house and the visitation program started. A group of folks were already doing visits prior to that, but 2010 is when kind of more organized effort was put into visitation, like visiting people in detention, visiting immigrants who might have loved ones here in the United States, or maybe in the Southeast, or maybe other parts of the country, but are not able to travel often to visit them. Some of them don't have close relatives, so they didn't have a chance to receive a visitor. So we organized visits to go down there and meet with them in person in the detention center. And then we first saw the great need. I mean, you know where the detention center is located, this small town in Lumpkin, Georgia. It's on less than 1,500 people lives in this small town, and there is this big, massive detention center that can detain up to 2,000 people. So it's a very isolated place. It's 2.5 hours from the city of Atlanta. No hotels, no grocery stores, no parks. So if you travel from anywhere from the Atlanta area, it takes you 2 hours to get there. But we also learned that families were traveling, from making the journey from Durham, North Carolina, from Charlotte. So they were driving 8 hours to get there for 1 hour visit, and there is no lodging, at that time. So we come up with the idea of, what if we have a space, a house where we can welcome families, and we can continue doing the visits. We can bring more visitors, we can get more volunteers, and also assist the families. That's how our program was started. And my wife and I and about 8 other folks joining this volunteer group. And now, with like 10 years later, we're still doing this. And we have a bigger facility now. We're able to accommodate more families. We do more visits at the detention center. So it's been an incredible experience working alongside the families, knowing their stories, and getting to know the reality of people in detention.
Yeah, yeah. definitely. Did you found El Refugio then?
So a group of 8 of us were,
Yeah.
8 or 9 of us were the founders of Refugio. Yeah.
Awesome. Wow. And just talking about the location a little bit, I know that when my husband and I went and visited, we left our house, I think at like 6 a.m. to get there for a 9 or 10 o'clock, gathering at your hospitality house, and then ended up getting home pretty late, like 6 or
Mm-hmm.
7 at night. And so that's just us coming a couple hours from Atlanta. And so
Mm-hmm.
when we had that long day on a Saturday, it really did paint the picture of, gosh, I can't imagine families that have to come from so far away, and then there isn't any lodging there. I mean, the main street is just a few shops. It looked like, pretty much there's not a lot down there for lodging and stuff. So it is almost nearly impossible for families to come if you hadn't existed. So I mean, it's a
Exactly.
huge need that you're serving.
Yeah, it's definitely very, very challenging for family.
Mhm.
Not only you had to find accommodations and and dispenses you made for gas and food. It is a lot. Let alone the emotional and all the stress that families go through. So at least by offering hospitality to them, they don't have to worry about you know they have the money to feed my kids. They have the money to pay for a hotel. They
Right,
can do that out of Refugio for free.
right. Okay. And then you were talking a little bit about I know we were, at least, the conditions that the immigrants are living in, and just the macro issue of immigration in general. Can you just shed a little bit of light on that?
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, the reality of immigration detention is not something new. I mean, we started this work in 2010, and it was already really, uh, it has been an increase of detention during the last 3 or 4 decades in the United States,
Yeah.
especially since 1996. That immigration is basically tasked to detain immigrants, they a certain number of immigrants for deportation proceedings. Yes, place them in a deportation proceedings. So you're thinking about, uh, I think, three groups of people. I'll put it in that way: people who've been here in the United States for some of them for years, so decades sometimes, who have roots in the community, family, you know, um, and because their immigration status, they are taken into custody and sent to one of these detention centers across the United States. There is there are about more than 200 facilities, or facilities that detain immigrants. Some of them are like the one that we serve in the detention center at Stewart, big, managed by a for-profit corporation. Others are localities, the cities that or the counties that rent the space for immigration to detain immigrants. The other part of folks who are detained in Stewart are asylum seekers, people who cross the border, ask for protection. I think we started to see more asylum seekers in 2012, 2013, and of course during the last years, this has been a huge increase because of the conditions, the wars in different countries, or persecution and the violence, for example, in Central America. And so people are taken into custody and sent to these facilities that are, again, managed by for-profit corporation, which their main uh, uh, goal is to make profit for the detention of immigrants. So they're not there to take care of individuals, or not there to provide they provide just the basic needs, but not everything that people needs where are in the detention center. So, for
Mhm.
example, medical care is scarce, sometimes very limited, or sometimes not existent in these facilities. And we know, for example, we know specific cases of people who, had, dealing with diabetes, or other conditions inside a detention center that never treated, and they are sent to the hospital only when they are like, when there's an emergency, when these folks are either collapsing, or almost at the point with the medical staff in the detention center can do anything for them. um, the food that people receive is first of all, not nutritious. There is a lot of the same thing that there is given to them, potatoes and a lot of fats, fats and carbs. Nothing, no fruit, no vegetables, things like that. So if you have diabetes, for example, you have a specific diet, you might get, applesauce, for example, which has a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
And many other problems with the abuses that happen inside of the detention center. One of the biggest problems at Stewart, and it happens a lot in other detention center, is the excessive use of solitary confinement, for example, people who are placed in the hole, that's how they call it, el hoyo, where, they're basically punished because they either didn't follow the rules or did not understand the rules, or, for whatever reason. Some people are placed in these isolated cells for, between 15 days to 60 days, or sometimes more. So detention in general is very cruel and inhumane. And that's what we hear all the time with our visits with people in detention.
Yeah, when you say, I knew about the solitary confinement, and I didn't know the extent of how long it can range. And when you say 15 to 60 days, I think that can resonate with a lot of us right now, even me. And not even, I mean, it's not even that. What we're going through is nothing like solitary confinement, but yet we're still feeling a little bit of claustrophobia, living cooped up in our homes and not being able to go places. And so it just makes me think about how much worse that must feel. It's really sad.
It definitely is. I mean, just to put it in a very basic terms, the UN has classified that anything beyond 14 days is torture. And then we have known people who, a specific case, a person that I know, I met, I accompanied for the 3 years he was in detention. He was placed in solitary confinement, not because he was sick, not because he was broke the rules, because he was, very outspoken about the conditions inside of the detention center, and reclaim and talk to the guards, and basically was very outspoken about the situation. And then he was retaliated against, and they said, we're going to put you in solitary confinement because you're sick, because there was an outbreak at that time of chickenpox inside the detention center. So to protect you, we're going to put you in segregation. And then there is different models of segregation. There is medical segregation, there is administrative segregation, and there is the punishment type. So he apparently was put in segregation because of the medical situation, but it was not. It was basically, considered as a punishment. And then say, we're going to put you for 30 days so you don't, infect others or get infected for the chickenpox. And when those days, the end of his term, they said, we're going to give you another 30 days to make sure that you're clean and there is nothing else. And then he was very like, he came from Guatemala, and I already had a chickenpox. And then it's very clear that if you already have it, you're not going to, get it again. Or infect others. You have built that immune into your body. They just didn't care, and they just put him in segregation for 60 days because he was outspoken. It was basically asking for to be treated as a person, as a human being. And that's a story that we often in the detention center.
It makes me think of this question, and whether or not you can answer it, just let me know. But how can they get by with treatment like that? Is it simply because they're a for-profit entity and they can kind of call the shots, or why is there not more regulations around mistreatment?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. We as a country are allowing that to happen. We have given this corporation the power to decide what happened with people in detention without little or no oversight. The Department of Homeland Security, under the ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, has what they call immigration detention standards. So there is just a very, very thorough document on the conditions, how people should be treated inside of the detention center. But this is not a non-binding guidelines or document. Like, there is no oversight happening. Even the inspector general that has done inspections at Stewart and other detention centers have found so many flaws on the on those standards that are not, comply. Detentions don't comply with it, and yet they continue to operate like nothing happens. Like, there are people who die in detentions centers. There are 4 people who have died at Stewart in the last 2 years. And yet this detention center continues to operate like normal business. So the oversight is very, very little. And then organizations like South Georgia Detention Watch, SPLC, and then, we together with them have request Congress to come to the oversight committee to come and actually visit these facilities. But there is no much interest on doing this. These for-profit corporations have a lot of power. They run state and national elections too, so they buy politicians, so they can kind of don't do anything about what's happening inside of these facilities. They have a lot of power. They have a lot of money and a lot of influence in Washington.
Wow, I feel like this topic or this conversation we're having right now is kind of just not in the limelight very often, because when I learned about your organization, I started reading some of the materials and stuff to kind of get prepared to go visit, and that was just mind-boggling to me. I didn't know it was a for-profit entity. I didn't understand. I also didn't realize that Stewart, specifically here in South Georgia, has a low percentage of asylum seeking grants actually granted, and more so than the rest of the country. Is that right still?
Yeah, that's right. So not only has the highest rate of deportations in the United States, back in 2015, there was a study done at Stewart, and they found that the court actually 98.2% of the people at the court actually lost their cases. So less than 2% of the people at Stewart were able to win their cases and be released from detention. In the Atlanta court, which is the field office that managed also the Stewart court, there is about between 5 and 6% approval for asylum seekers. That's the rate. And then the national average is 42%. So it's close to sometimes a little bit more, depending what area you are. So if you're in Washington state, or you're in New York, your chances to be released on asylum claims are much higher than if you were sent to Stewart. And that's just by accident. Like, you are detained at the border, you claim asylum, you ask for protection, and they send you to many other places, to send you to different detention centers. So if you ended up going to Washington or New York, your chances are much higher. But if you're sent to Stewart, people know that's lost case. A lot of people know, if I'm sent to Stewart, they know that the road for the liberation or freedom from detention, their chances are very slim, very, very small.
It's crazy too, because I think a lot of people come here when they're seeking asylum, they're leaving just horrific conditions oftentimes, and they've endured a lot to even just get here, and then they get put into detention, and the torture continues essentially in a lot of ways, which is just so sad to me. But anyway, can we talk a little bit about like how this pandemic is affecting people in detention right now, or is it like, is the border open? Is it closed? I think it's closed. I don't really know. I haven't been keeping up on that. So if you could just shed light on the whole issue there, that'd be great.
Yeah. So, and then a lot happened in the last couple of years. And then during this pandemic, basically the administration has decided to halt all hearings for, like every person who comes to the border right now asking for protection is not being taken into custody. Basically, they're just sent back to Mexico. People need to wait on the line, and that happened before COVID-19. But now it's just nothing is happening. Like if you come to the border and ask for rotation, they're not going to allow you to come in, and they're just going to shut the door. That's basically what happened. And
Yeah.
there are other initiatives like for people who were waiting for visas, and that's for different processes that are also being halted or paused for now. So there is a lot at the national level that's happening. As Stewart, for example, with the courts, there are some hearings happening, but everything is being through Skype calls. But some hearings are delayed, in the detention center. So a lot of people who we've been in contact with, either through phone calls or letters, are complaining about, we've been here for so long. We already know that, I don't have a chance. I'll be deported no matter what. I just want to go back. But that's not happening. One, either because they're from countries who are not at the moment accepting people because of coronavirus and with real claims. We learned that the Guatemalan government, for example, reported that over 75% of the people who were deported from the United States were tested positive for COVID-19 upon arrival in Guatemala. So, which is very concerning. That's why many people are not being deported. I think Mexicans and people from other countries might have different restrictions and might still be deported. But that's a big problem for a lot of people in detention. That's to where there are many cases of COVID-19 confirmed cases. Unfortunately, we started to learn that from the very very first days of this pandemic. In that kind of erupted in the United States. And the problem with detention is that there is no way people can, have social distance. Like there is no way you can, they're already confined in an enclosed space, 60, 70 people sharing, a open room and bunk beds, and sharing bathroom and sharing everything. There is no way people can don't have contact, and the pandemic and the COVID-19 can easily spread in detention. There are technically, or ICE have reported that there is 11 immigrants detained at Stewart who have COVID-19 confirmed cases. However, there is, like, ICE has reported to Congress that only about 500 people in detention have been tested for COVID-19. So they're just not, nationwide. So and then you're talking about more than 36,000 people detained. Immigration is just not testing people to avoid issues where, like, they just don't want to recognize that COVID-19 is inside of the detention centers. They wanted to keep that that number low so they don't face more scrutiny from the public. On the flip side of things, staff at the detention center are also getting infected by COVID-19. There is more than 40 staff in the detention center who tested positive. So in a facility that has more than 1,900 people detained, 300 employees, 40 of them are infected, but only 9 or 11 people detained are infected. It's just because they're not testing immigrants. So the number is much higher. We get calls of people saying, in my unit there is at least 20 people who have flu-like symptoms that have this basic COVID symptoms and not been taken to the hospital and been serious for their their claims of feeling sick, and then taken to the medical unit or doing the testing. Like, we know a specific case of someone who tested positive, was taken to the hospital, and was returned to a detention center the same day.
Wow.
I hope you can edit this. Oscar, ¿puedes cerrar la puerta, por favor?
That was fun. We got a special guest today. So that leads me to thinking two things. One, is it since their COVID-19 is getting in the detention centers, is that keeping them from wanting to do the like cases and releasing people and stuff? And then is it also keeping them from allowing visitors, like their families and stuff, to visit right now?
So that's part of it. So social visits were canceled in March 14. So there is no social visits happening. There are other issues that we hear from the detention center, like sometimes calls are not allowed. When people voice their concerns and say, we know we need to be treated, we need to have, PPE equipment, and they're not provided, all of them, or some of them are provided, or masks are provided, but they're not replaced. A person that I talked to said they gave us masks, but they haven't not replaced them for more than 12 days now, which is an issue. Some of us have soap, not everyone has. There is some units that have or disinfectant for their personal belongings, but not everyone has it. So there's a big problem with that. So all those issues of like not testing folks, or the blocks of visitation, sometimes just so people don't know what's happening inside of the detention center.
Wow, even some people not having soap, that's surprising to me right now. Wow. Okay, so I think if we can get into we spent a lot of time, which has been super eye-opening. I think it's important to better understand the issue at hand to then be able to look at how you're helping through El Refugio. And I think that brings us to the point in the conversation where there's a lot of light and potential, and serving others and loving each other through what you do. So can you just share a little bit about the services that you provide generally, what you're doing now specifically?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen some different initiatives come through from you guys. So I think there's a lot of really great stuff to dig into here.
Yeah, so usually before COVID-19, we were doing visits with people in detention. We provide clothing for many of them who either have been, released or deported, and we, bring those for them, shoes and clothing at the detention center. Send letters to people, send support letters to people for the court hearings. For families, we of course provide the free lodging, meals, and support, and gas cards, and all that. Unfortunately, with COVID-19, we had to take that hard decision of it is not safe for us to have the house open. It's not safe for anyone, so we had to make that decision. But that didn't stop us from offering other services. So we still are able to help some people who are released from detention. We just had a gentleman who was released, and because he was going to New York, where his family lives, he wanted to stay a few days here in Georgia before things are getting it's bad everywhere, but New York is the epicenter of COVID. So he stayed here for 2 weeks, and he finally went to New York, and then we were able to provide. We don't have the house open, so we had to be creative, and we find an Airbnb. One of our volunteers' mom has an Airbnb, and they were so hospitable and welcomed him and provided meals to him. And he was like a separate apartment, so there was non-contact with anyone. So we've been doing that. We have paid for sunrise. Sometimes people are released and are taken to the airport. So we either contact just order a Lyft ride for them, or other things that we're doing with folks who are released. For the families, since we're not at the house and we're not providing like gas cards and things like that for them, but we know that immigrant families are the most affected at this point, because they're not getting the CARE Act doesn't cover them. So immigrants are not receiving those $500 or $1,000 the government gave to every US citizen, and immigrants are not receiving that help. So they're struggling if they don't have a job, they're not able to provide for the kids. So we've been like the families who are in contact with us are receiving care packages or solidarity care packages from us, and we're sending some masks. We put a campaign to volunteers to do masks, and we received so many. So we're sending packages to the families with, depending how many there are, like at least 4 masks for them, a grocery or like Walmart gift card. We also had, because people donated a lot of those like fast food cards, we also, put one of those in there. Just general instructions how clean your stuff, and kind of general instructions for COVID-19.
Yeah.
Toilet paper, we were donated a lot of toilet paper because we have our own registry through Target or others, and people buy stuff for the house. So now the house is not being used, we're not using the toilet paper at the house. We had a lot of in our inventory, so we just sending them to the families. For and of course we know that's not enough, that people need other assistance. We're also putting other resources, like if they're from Raleigh, for example, we letting them know these are the organizations in your area who either like food pantries or people or organizations that can assist you with paying rent and things like that. So that's the few things that we're doing. We're sending letters to people in detention. So we got a lot of letters from people, just general message like we know that people feel now that we don't visit, we're not allowed to do visits, we still can accompany them at least through letters. And people get creative and sending like handwritten letters. So we've been sending those to people. We deposit money into their phone accounts so they can call their loved ones. We also deposited money into a commissary account because we heard that several people didn't have, soap, or they didn't have enough food, so they couldn't kind of supplement then their meals from commissary. So that's the few things that we've been doing. We've been busy. Even though we're not, the house is not open, we've been doing a lot remotely, supporting our families and the people detained at Stewart as well. The last thing I would say, that together with the other members in the Georgia community and Atlanta folks who are like very active and advocates and organizations doing a lot of advocacy, have joined those efforts to either call in the Georgia Department of Public Health, the governor, the Georgia delegation in DC, and many other representatives to help to release people in detention, because the only way we can stop the spreading of the virus in detention center is that people actually are released and are able to be with their loved ones.
Wow, there was so much there, and I'm like, you're just basically filling the gaps wherever there's a need, right? And it's really organic, it seemed like, and wherever, the story you had of the man that was released and how you were able to help him, that was just on a case-by-case basis. And I've seen that throughout the whole time I've followed your work too. And I think that's really beautiful and amazing that you're able to take people and walk with them on a case-by-case basis and see the person and the individual, and just literally try to find ways to pivot in times like this. And it's amazing, and I love what you do. I've been able to write letters back and forth with the person I visited, and it really is it's one of those things that it just feels like such a privilege to even be able to be part of someone's life who's going through something like this. And it's amazing. So thank you for providing people like me the ability to get involved on a small level in the work that you're doing, for walking with people individually, for the advocacy, for the things you're doing for families, everything like that. And it makes me want to get more involved again with what you're doing. Can you just share for others who are excited like I am right now to be able to get involved? What are some of the tactical ways they could get involved right now?
So I will say, I just, repeat what we already doing. I think people can write letters, and we can make that available. And like we have a toolkit for people. So it's very simple.
Yeah.
We even have samples on the letters that you can send and where to send it. And we, you know, you don't have to provide your mailing address. We do all that. You just need to write the letter and send it to our PO box. That's a very simple way, and it's like a family activity you can do, and you know, use color. You know, that's that kind of like can 15 minutes of your time, 20 minutes of your time can actually make someone's day, and that's what we wanted to do with the letters. So people feel like there is people outside who cares and don't feel alone and forgotten. So that's a very simple thing. We still collecting masks. So if you are making masks for your family, if you want to make a few extra and send it to Refugio, we're doing that. As I mentioned, we're sending gift cards to families. So if people wanted to, donate either directly to our website or send the gift cards to us, that's something that they can do. I guess educating others about the issues of immigrants, that's very important. When you know what's happening, you can start conversations in your family, in your community, to make others aware of the issues of what people face in detention. And of course, hopefully when things get more, I don't know, I don't think we never get to the normal, or
Yeah.
like normal business. But when we're able to open the house, when it's safe to do that, and when we're able to do visits, of course, in the detention center, when we're safe to do that, we will welcome visitors, we welcome volunteers at our hospitality house, serving people in the way that we do, just offering hospitality and being welcoming present to them.
Wow, so many great ways to get involved and at different times and different levels of involvement too. And I know I've shared the hospitality house visit and the detention visit and stuff with the people in my small group, and they're very interested in visiting and all that. So maybe that's something we'll be able to do whenever this settles down a little bit. But I want to just end with one question that I think is could be really powerful. So what's one thing you'd like people to understand about immigrants living in detention right now?
I think because there is a lot of misinformation, because there is a lot of um, uh, like demonizing immigrants, and the criminalization of immigrants. I will say that one thing that we all need to understand, that immigrants are people. Immigrants are human beings. People in detention have the same constitutional rights that anyone has, and they're protected by the Constitution. And they should not be going through what we're doing to them in the detention center. They should be able to, if they have immigration issues, they should be able to, go through a process that is fair, but not these inhumane ways and tactics that immigration is using to, um, you know, to contain a group of people, in detention. So I will say that's the most important thing, that we see them as a human being, that they have the same desires, they enjoy the same things that we enjoy, and you enjoy to be with your kids, people also enjoy to be their kids, and they should be able to be with their families. We enjoy to go to the park and do the normal things. They should be able to do that and not be locked up in a detention center.
Yeah, beautiful picture of human dignity and loving each other and caring for each other regardless of where we come from or anything like that. And as you were talking about that, I just have to say it brought me back to my visit with the person I visited, and it's completely so true, like the things that he shared with me and the desires of his heart, and just a pure good human being that wanted to serve God through his life. And he was, he could only do that within the walls of where he was living at that moment. But the whole conversation brought me to tears, and I'll never forget it. It was one of those high mountaintop God moments, just a connection between glass of someone that I met with for less than 60 minutes. And so it's just a really powerful thing to meet people where they are and love them through it all. So thank you so much, Amilcar, for this conversation. This is like one of my favorite conversations so far.
Thank
It's
you.
just been pure goodness, and thanks so much for just letting us kind of pick your brain and understand this a little bit more. And it's really reignited some of the passion that I saw a while back, and everything in this really important issue. So thanks so much, and
Thank you. Thank you
we'll
so
stay
much.
in touch.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that was a pretty incredible conversation. Again, it's one of my favorite conversations so far, I think, just because of the depth that we were able to go into in understanding immigration and what goes on in detention centers. Just the thought of going through everything these people are fleeing, they're seeking asylum in a lot of cases, and the difficulty they're fleeing from, and then only to find more difficulty when they arrive and end up in detention. It's just, it sheds a lot of light, and it's eye-opening for me, and I hope it was for you. I think one of the biggest things that Amilcar mentioned towards the end was that we can share this with others and help spread the message of what's actually happening and how these people are treated in detention, and how we can help. So he gave us a lot of ways that we can support, we can encourage, we can even go visit when the time is right. So there's a lot of ways that we can make light out of a sad and difficult situation, and El Refugio is leading that charge here in Georgia, and there's other organizations across the country doing similar work. So anyway, I hope this was enlightening. I hope you found it not only convicting but also encouraging, and if so, I would encourage you to share it with someone that you care about and help spread the word of this very important issue. And on top of that, I would love to see your comments below. I want to have a conversation with you too. And as always, a new video will be coming out next Tuesday. And when if you go to lovelightstories.com, you can sign up to receive an email the next time a story does come out. And until then, I'll be thinking of you, and I'll be praying for our world, and we'll see you next time.